Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. And today I want to talk about the books that I read in May because May was a really weird reading month for me. The first half of May was extremely busy, and then the second half was very much not busy. So I ended up reading 9 books in the month of May. So let me get started because I want to get through these as quickly as possible. So the first book that I read in May was The Girl on the Train. So I know this was a big deal when it came out, and then a big deal again when the movie was released. And my boyfriend ended up watching the movie a few months ago and basically made me move the book up in my TBR, for which I'm glad. It's a really interesting mystery. It's this woman who is on the train every day on her way to work, and she thinks she sees something funny out the window of the train. She thinks she's a witness to something nefarious that has gone on. The thing that's a little bit tricky about this novel and that I didn't like as much was the fact that you're in the head of an alcoholic for so long. And I felt like if you're going to pick up this book, you should be aware that you're going to spend a lot of time in the mind of an alcoholic, and that if that's a trigger for you, then you want to stay away. But the story was intriguing. I liked the resolution. I love the ending. And then after I finished reading this book, I went and talked to my sister because she had read it a few years ago, had wanted me to read it at the time. But she and I always do this. We recommend books to each other, and then because they've been recommended by us, by each other, we wait a while to get to them. But then when we finally read the recommendation, it's like, you were right. I enjoyed this book. I should have read it when you first recommended it. So this was one of those cases. The mystery was intriguing. By the end, I knew the basics of what was going on. But again, I felt like the resolution was rewarding, and I enjoyed that. So that's all I'm going to say. Because with thrillers, you don't want to say too much, you don't want to reveal too much, you want to go into these blinds, although I have a feeling I'm like the last one in the country to have read this book. But still, I enjoyed it. I think I gave it, I think I originally gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I would give it more of a 3.5 stars now because it doesn't stay with you that much. So the next books that I want to talk about are the 3 books in the InDepth series that I read. I read Divided in Death, Visions in Death, and then Survivor in Death. So I'm through book 20 in the InDepth series. It's a long series, so I am in no danger of running out of these. But these have become like comfort food for me, in large part because I know how they're going to end. I know the mystery is going to be resolved at the end of the book, and I know that our main detective, Eve Dallas, will have gotten something interesting will have happened in her life or in the life of the people around her. And so these 3 books follow the same kind of plot lines, and overall they were enjoyable. Now I'm starting to get to the point where there are some misses in the series. I've mostly pretty much enjoyed every book I've read up until now in the series. The one that I thought was not as good in the set that I read now was Visions in Death. The mystery was actually really interesting, but I did think there were some plot issues with the story, along with some of the casual racism that Nora Roberts threw in there, which I did not appreciate. And some stuff's not as big of a deal. I don't think a lot of people have a problem with the way that darker skin is usually described in books, which is using food. Like when there's a couple of black characters, and she uses things like chocolate and coffee to describe the color of their skin. And if you don't have a problem with that, that's fine. Sometimes it just gets old when you read those kinds of descriptions over and over again. There was also some sort of Latina type character. I don't know if we're ever told exactly what her ethnic background is, but the main character has this whole dialogue in her head about, oh, I wonder if this person is Mexican or Spanish, and it all depends on how much time in the sun she's had, and it was a bit odd. Not so problematic that I didn't finish the book or never want to read her again or anything like that. It was just like, oh, cringe, move on. And so I'm moving on. So, whew, just FYI that you know, and I've heard a lot that there's some misses in the series, so I'm finally getting to some of them, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'm still enjoying the InDepth series, and again, I will continue with it. But the next book that I read in May was The Storm Runner by J.C. Cervantes, and this was the April book for the Latinx readathon. And it is, so a little bit about the plot. You are following the main character, Saint Obispo, who lives right by a volcano. And he has spent a lot of time at this volcano, so he thinks of this volcano as his. And then something lands in the volcano. And what is it? And a little bit of a spoiler alert, not really, but this book features a lot of Mayan mythology is woven in here. I've really been into mythology lately, and so I was really looking forward to this book, but unfortunately this was a miss for me. I'm giving it 2 out of 5 stars because, well, in large part I feel like I was not the audience for this book. It's a middle grade book, but I've been enjoying middle grade books lately, the few that I've been sprinkling into my reading, but this one didn't quite do it for me. So one, some of the other folks in the book club, I think very accurately pinpointed the ableism in this book, and that the main character has a disability. He walks with a cane because his feet aren't quite the same length. So he uses a cane to help him walk. And the entire book, we are in his head, and he like hates this thing about him. And I expected there to be a development in that. Like, I was like, by the end, this is like, or as the story progresses, this is something that he is going to learn to see as an asset. And there was no development of that. And that really underscores the main problem that I identified with the story, and that is the character development. There basically is no character development in the story. There's a lot of plot. And I have to tell you that I am a plot-driven reader. I need plot in my stories. Not all of them, but largely I need plot. But when you completely neglect character development, that's also a problem. Or it diminishes my enjoyment of the story at the very least. And I felt like there are so the characters do undergo changes at the very end of the book, but they happen all in one chapter, it seemed like. And I felt like they happen out of nowhere as opposed to there being development throughout the story. The Maya mythology aspects in it were really cool to read, and so I wouldn't say like don't read this book, especially because if you have like kids in the age group that this was intended for, but I would be careful with the ableism, and yeah, that's it, because like I said, ultimately I think you have to take my opinion there with the knowledge that I know I'm not the intended audience for it. All right, so that's it on the Storm Runner. It's a series, and I think for me, I'm just going to leave it here and not continue with the series. But the next book that I read in May was The Mothers by Brit, Bennett. So this is the Known Voices, and that the main character is Black, and our author is also Black. If you're interested in a book about reproductive rights, this is one of them. It's very explicitly dealing with reproductive right issues. There are a couple of trigger warnings I want to warn everybody about. So trigger warnings for not on the page suicide, but discussions of suicide and abortion. So if those are topics that are triggering to you, then you should stay away. But if that interests you, I think that this is actually a really brilliant book. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I'm actually going to do a dedicated review of this coming up. So I'll keep my comments here brief and just say that you're following Nadia, who is, I think, 17 when we meet her, about to go off to college. She's brilliant. She's got her whole future ahead of herself, but she's dealing with the grief of losing her mother to suicide. This happens before the book starts. It's off the page, but it's going to play a central role. And she is kind of acting out because her father is also having trouble dealing with the loss of his wife and doesn't know how to parent as a single dad. And so Nadia begins acting out, and she finds comfort in the arms of an older man, the son of the pastor's son for the church she attends. And that is when she is faced with having to make a choice. And she makes the choice, and it involves a couple of other people who are making choices related around this choice that she makes. And right at that time, she forms an unlikely friendship with Aubrey, who is in a lot of ways the opposite of her, but it's like they meet each other and they find each other at just the right time. And so a really close friendship develops that ends up continuing over the course of their lives, but it is complicated by all these relationships and secrets that are kept in amongst these three people and in the community. And so we basically follow kind of several decades of their lives and seeing how, choices and secrets and relationships, interwoven relationships, are affecting these people. It is such a complex tale that is approached in a very human way. And so I really, really enjoyed it. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this, then watch out for my dedicated video for this book. All right, the next book that I read was Amiss. I read Jodi Picoult's Small Great Things. I'm giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. So I'll give you the quick synopsis of it. We're following Ruth, who is a Black nurse, and she's one of the few Black nurses at the hospital. She is the only Black nurse in the labor and delivery wing of the hospital. She walks into a room one day, and she encounters a family of white supremacists who don't want her to touch their baby, even though she is the most experienced, capable nurse there. So, all right, they take her off of these people's care, and then everybody gets really busy because they're a bit understaffed, and the baby has a crisis, and she is the only one around to provide care for the baby. Things ensue, and we're basically following the aftermath of this, I'll just give you the things that I have a problem with here. One of the major problems for me was that we spent quite a few chapters in the head of a white supremacist. And while I think it is important to kind of understand what drives these people, personally, I didn't feel the need to spend that much time in the head of a white supremacist, and I feel like I already know what drives these people, and I don't just think of these people as cartoon characters, and they're very real, and they play a very real role in our society. And like, I'm someone who teaches the Nazi era in my classes. I even assign portions of Mein Kampf. I use it in very strategic ways. But maybe because of that, I just feel no need to, in my fiction, be in the head of a white supremacist in this way. Like, there was nothing really unique in what Picoult was doing with that here, and so I just had no need to be in these chapters. I did identify very much with the nurse. Ruth was built on the page so well. You can't help but identify with her and care about her, and her discussions of racism and the way that especially those of us that are not white but spend a lot of time in white spaces, some of the problems we encounter in those spaces are handled well here. But then there's the relationship between our main character Ruth and her sister, which I did not appreciate. Picoult basically pits them as like two opposite sides, where Ruth, the main character, chose to assimilate into white culture and white society and basically reject Black culture. Whereas her sister chose to embrace Black culture, reject white society, and as a result lives in poverty, and her sons are like troublemakers, bad influences on Ruth's son. And the whole time I was reading the stuff on the sister, I was like, oh no, oh no. And she's the one that gives us the like social justice perspective, but we're told like basically that that's not the route to take. Sort of, I did not like the way that was handled. This is another one of those cases where I was not the intended audience of this book. This, I think, was very much written for white women, especially. And I think that there's a good discussion here of casual racism, because she uses the main character to explain a lot of things to the white women she's coming into interaction with. And so I think that's very clearly the audience, in that somebody who hasn't experienced racism and who doesn't pay attention to it would get a lot out of here, because those are the white women we see in this story. They're well-meaning, they're not racist, but from time to time do and say things that are not quite right and that can be fixed because they can be very hurtful. And I have to say, my book club loved this book, and it's not made up of all white women. Like, there was only white women in the book club when we met up for this book, so it might just be a me thing. So I did not enjoy it, but I'm hopefully giving you enough of what's going on in this book that you might decide that, hey, that sounds really interesting, you want to read it, and in which case I would not deter you from it, because it felt very, I was the only one who didn't enjoy it in the book club, and I was quite surprised, but it's fair. All right, the last book that I read in May is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So I'm so glad that this is the first book in a series. I haven't rated it on Goodreads yet, but I think I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars because I think it's going to be like an end of the year favorite. We're following a 17-year-old Cassie, and actually I thought the best way to describe it was Criminal Minds with teenagers. That's basically it, because we're following 17-year-old Cassie. She has experienced tragedy in her life, but she has a natural skill. She's really good at reading people and basically profiling them. And the FBI has become very interested in people with these kinds of natural abilities, that sometimes, kids will have a natural ability when they're young, but then they kind of don't nurture that ability, and so it gets lost as they grow older. And so the FBI is interested in identifying these kids at an early age so that they can nurture these abilities, because they're very handy for the FBI. And so they put together a program, and so we're following the kids in this program, and they're all super interesting. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on all of them, but we got to know a few of them here, and I'm just interested in continuing to learn more about these kids, especially the ones that don't get a whole lot of time in this book. The mystery that you follow here, it was quite intriguing. It wasn't the most original one, but this is an introductory book, so what we mostly care about in this book is the characters and kind of the dynamics that are getting developed here, because they're going to continue over the course of a series. And I was just totally sucked into the story, fell in love, and I want everybody to read this book. Like, if this sounds at all interesting, pick it up. My sister's coming to visit me in June, and I've already warned her to leave some room in her suitcase because she's going home with at least this one. Because she and I have very, like I said, she's the one I was talking about with the girl on the train. We have similar tastes, and I know she's going to love this, and I don't want her to put off reading this. It's not a difficult book to get through, and once you get to the thriller aspects for it, you like can't put it down. So, yeah, so highly, highly recommend. I won't say anything more about it because with thrillers, you want to know really as little as possible. Just know that if it intrigues you at all, that you should pick it up. All right, that is it. Those are all the books that I read in May. I had a few disappointments in here, but I also had some really good books that I really enjoyed. So watch out for some of the dedicated videos on these, and watch out for more videos coming up in June and July, because this is my 2 heavy readathon months. I'm going to be doing every readathon under the sun. Basically, but I have time for it now, and so that part of what the readathons do is they help me generate a lot more content for the channel, so there'll be a lot more videos coming up. So I'm thinking I'm going to keep the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule with some bonus videos over the weekend. So yeah, keep an eye out. Hopefully you'll be enjoying some of that content. Thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.